Story 1. My mom hid tens of thousands of dollars of debt from my dad. He should have divorced her, but instead, he stuck around and wrote in his journals, which I looked at after he passed, about hating his life and the affairs that he wished he had. Story 2. I never knew my spouse was a talented musician until after we got married. It's been amazing discovering this hidden talent and enjoying impromptu concerts in our living room. Story 3. I grew up with a buddy in the neighborhood. At his wedding, he told this story about how he grew up wealthy, traveled the world with his parents, and was university educated. In reality, he's from the projects, lived in poverty, and never finished university. I had to sit there and listen to him tell the story at his wedding. I still hang out with him and his wife. He keeps telling this lie. It makes me crazy. Story 4. A year into our marriage, she got back on all the medications she was on before we had met because her doctor got his medical license reinstated. She went from a great, happy, outgoing person with an awesome personality to an emotional vegetable. She had a pill for everything: anxiety, benzodiazepines, depression, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, work, amphetamine, sleep, salpetum, and pain, oxycodone, to name a few. She was a walking pharmacy, and all she cared about was her medication. Story 5. He doesn't like eggplant. He made me eggplant parmesan for our first date at his house. And 5 years into marriage, he confesses he doesn't like eggplant. Story 6. The full depth of the emotional damage done to her during childhood. We've been together 10 years now, and I still don't know the entire story, and that's okay. She's in therapy and getting help, and that's what matters the most. Story 7. That she lied about her favorite dinosaur. That she doesn't even like dinosaurs that much. The signs were all there. I was just too in love to see them. When she responded with the one with 3 horns, I should have known. I was so oblivious. Story 8. That even if the smallest things don't go as planned, she would completely lose control over herself, both physically and emotionally. She would literally be shaking if she forgot to sign one piece of paper for work. And that she is madly selfish. Needless to say, she is my soon-to-be ex-wife. Only been married for 5 years. And yes, we've done couples counseling. It really opened up my eyes. I think I was blinded by my love for her. But I could only take so much. I'm glad I realized that I didn't want her to be the mother of my kids before we had any. We've even picked out the names. Yeah, we were like 6 months away from starting to try. It's been about a month since we've separated. As in moved out and got our own places. 0 regrets. I know I made the right decision. Story 9. We had been together for 5 years, married for 2, with 2 children when the truth came out. We were out to dinner on a rare date night away from the kids. Everything was going great. We were chatting back and forth, just enjoying each other's company, when she dropped the bombshell. She had been lying to me the entire time. She finally confessed that green was, in fact, not her favorite color. It was her second. She tells people green so she won't be judged as a silly little girl. Her one true color love was and will always be pink. Story 10. That he knew how to cook, and incredibly well at that. The entire time we were dating, he had a small kitchen that he didn't like cooking in, so we always went out to eat when I visited him. I cooked when he came to my place. When we moved in together, we got a place with a bigger kitchen, and he started to offer to cook. Pork chops, casseroles, taco nights, charcuterie boards, shrimp po' boys, and so on just came out of the woodwork. I felt like I won the jackpot. Story 11. I wouldn't call it hiding it from me per se because it wasn't her fault. She was sexually abused as a child by friends of the family. Drunken pedophiles that preyed on the little girls of her small town. It's a dirt poor town, and the men would just do whatever they wanted to whomever they wanted. Beat and rape their women and abuse the children. She didn't tell me until we were about 3 years into marriage. I completely understood her and told her that nothing changed and I would never look or think of her differently. When she told me, the first thing I wanted to do was go to that town and beat the guy to death. She would bawl her eyes out, calling herself unclean and unworthy of being in a genuine marriage. I would console her every time she had a breakdown. She was destroyed mentally from those traumatic experiences of abuse. And since she hasn't been able to get pregnant, we suspect the abuse from her childhood has something to do with that. We knew we were having problems with getting pregnant, but I thought maybe it was just something slightly abnormal. Apparently, she had major damage and never healed properly, so that's the main cause of her not being able to get pregnant. She was just a little girl, victimized by some lowlife, and she's tortured mentally because she wants us to have a child like it's the only thing she wants. These days, she's gotten better about accepting the past and improving the future. I accept who she is regardless of circumstance. But I still want to beat that guy to death, not only for what he did to her as a child but for the mental torture she still endures. Story 12. The scope and depth of how much of her family disapproved of her marrying an American. They assumed a very negative stereotype of Americans and were quite surprised to find out I speak multiple languages, which has resulted in some embarrassing moments for those who assumed I wouldn't understand what they were saying about me. I've seen the negative opinions of Americans when traveling, but I was surprised at how many in her family had extremely negative opinions. I think most of them have changed their opinions of me, but it's hard to know if it's my personality or wealth that has changed their minds. Story 13. This may be a little too personal, but I had a woman who I was very into and was dating for a few months. She was fantastic. Great personality, great sex, great conversation. I was actually thinking she was the one. We started a relationship, but the further we got into the relationship, she couldn't hide her very severe mental illness anymore. Her depression was bad. Like I was worried I was going to walk into her apartment one day and find her dead. Levels of bad. I tried to be there for her and encouraged her to seek mental help, but she never did, and it became worse over time. I blamed myself because I thought I was the cause or that I wasn't good enough and couldn't save her. I knew why she was depressed and the reasons she had those issues, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't fix her. Nothing made me feel worse as a man, person, or partner than her having mental breakdowns all the time and me not being able to fix it and make her happy. I knew it was well beyond my scope, and I knew it wasn't my fault, but deep down, I truly blamed myself and considered myself a failure that I couldn't make someone I loved so much happy. It made me feel like I wasn't enough. This went on for the better part of 2 years, and I focused so much on trying to make her happy and trying to get her better that I completely ignored the mental health issues I was having because of this. For a large part of those 2 years, I was truly afraid that if I left her, she would actually kill herself and I could never live with that guilt. Around the 2-year mark, she had a pretty severe mental breakdown. During this, I completely broke down myself and told her that I couldn't keep doing this and that no matter how much I loved her, that if she didn't get some help, I couldn't be with her. She did finally get some help, therapy, and got on some medication and got immensely better over the course of the next 6 or so months. However, my mental health was completely shattered at this point. After focusing so much on her for so long while completely ignoring my own mental health, combined with my father getting diagnosed with cancer and taking care of my dying grandmother, I spiraled into a deep, dark depression. I was stupid and couldn't take my own advice and get myself some professional help. I even started having some health issues of my own, which caused me to not be able to have sex for a few months. She ended up cheating on me when I was staying at my dad's for a week taking care of him after a surgery he had. I don't think I could describe to you the absolute pit of hell I felt mentally and emotionally after that. That was the lowest part of my life. I am glad to say that this was a few years ago and after a lot of therapy that I am doing better. Therapy helped me learn that it isn't my responsibility to take care of everyone around me, and especially at the cost of my mental health. My Superman syndrome will flare up sometimes, especially when it comes to my sisters, but I have learned to set healthy boundaries with people. It's still something I'm working on, and it's challenging because of my golden retriever personality, as my sisters call it. I still always feel the need to take on everyone's burdens and help everyone, but I have learned to find the balance of being there for people and not sacrificing my own well-being to do so. The moral of the story is don't ignore your mental health, guys, and that there is no shame in getting therapy. Learn what you can control and change and accept what you can't. Learn to set healthy boundaries with people and stick to them. There are some things in life you can't fix or solve no matter how hard you try, and you have to accept that. For those curious but too shy or afraid to ask, she was undiagnosed bipolar, and her mother had tragically passed about 2 years before this. Story 14. That she had my replacement already lined up even before we had met. She jumped to him after we separated. She had never mentioned this guy ever before. Her betrayal hurt like nothing before. Story 15. My late wife was not as diligent at taking her medication as she was supposed to be and led me to believe before we married. She ended up passing away because of it. Story 16. That she was a freak, laughing out loud. When we got together, I was less experienced than her. She had a few boyfriends and flings, whereas she was my first, so my comfort level was very vanilla. Then, a few months after our marriage, a switch was flipped. I asked her why she hid that side from me until after we got married, and she said she wanted to make sure she didn't scare me away. 25 years married, and she's still a freak. Story 17. That she farts like a pit pony when she's eaten certain foods. Is hilarious and impressive in equal measure. She is tiny, so the first time I heard one of her mega farts, I couldn't understand how someone so small could make such a noise and actually jumped in fear. That made her laugh, causing the machine gun farting that laughing causes. Story 18:1. That her student loans were over 300,000. That she had defaulted on several low balance bills like medical and veterinary within the last couple of years before. That she was not very sexually attracted to me. Story 19. That he only bathes a couple of times a month and has no concept of a clean house. Just one reason why you should live with someone before marrying them. Story 20. That a history of mental illness ran in her family on her mother's side. Her great-grandmother was schizophrenic and her mother was severely bipolar, and she was on medication to manage it. Ex-wife's mental health issues started right around 30, just like her great-grandmother. Story 21. That she was a nymphomaniac. From the day we met, she made it absolutely clear there would be no intimacy until she was married. She was good at her word. Once we were married, she tried to kill me. Story 22. My soon-to-be ex-wife was horribly addicted to her mother and her prescription drugs. Her mother and her mom's recommended psychologist started it all. Her mom was a rich real estate agent talking millions. Her mom developed the lower half of Georgia basically, so she never had to work or pay for anything in her life. Later, her mom got cancer and through chemotherapy she kind of went crazy. Because real estate is not a viable way of getting health insurance, they all found out really fast how modern-day middle-class people live. Her mother still got big royalty checks, so I wouldn't even call it poverty. They downgraded to a 2,400 square foot house with a 6-car garage. My ex left for college but figured out life was too hard. In my opinion, it really wasn't. She had money coming in from her parents and a provided car that she didn't have to pay gas or insurance for, and she had to move back home because of life's challenges. Instead of her parents telling her to grow up, her mom said, "Try this," and it led to a downhill spiral on top of the stuff she took in college. I sort of knew before I met her that she was doing it, but I stopped it when we got married. Little did I know, her mom went behind my back when my ex would complain about pain or whatever and would drive 30 minutes to her parents' house just to get prescription drugs from her mom, on top of the meds she was prescribed. This went on for 2 years. I was working 2 jobs to support us while she was a part-time, 15 hours a week Christian school teacher, and would just drive back and forth between her mother's house, our apartment, and the school. Every night, I would come home to her being high. I could have and should have put my foot down to stop the drug abuse and her enabling parents, but whatever method I used, I was cast as a controlling and mean husband. I was so numb to everything and, having long days at 2 jobs, I just ignored it. When my main job lost the contract, I got a new job as a traveling field technician with the company I am with now. On my first week of traveling in March 2023, she got fired from her job because she was asleep while working with kids. That took a toll on her and she crashed her mother's car, her car, and a rental while she was high. But somehow the officers did not charge her with being under the influence. I was livid. I got home from traveling and our apartment was destroyed. She took her mother's pills and hers at the same time and outright hallucinated. I found her over the toilet and called 911. We arrived at the hospital and I let her parents know the situation. We were in the doctor's operating room, and he asked me to get all the prescriptions she was taking. It filled up 2 one-gallon Ziploc bags. He brought that number down to 3 prescriptions she only needed. Her mom, as soon as the doctor left, grabbed some of the prescriptions and said she needed this and that still. The doctor found out, and immediately, she was sent to a psych ward for a week. I picked her up, and we talked on the way home. I told her if this happened again, I would just leave her and divorce. I told her to stop seeing the psychologist that was overprescribing her meds and to stop contacting her mother for meds. As soon as we parked the car, she immediately began calling the pharmacy and her mom for medicine like nothing ever happened. I was extremely livid and threw my ring across the parking lot. She lashed out at me, saying I was too controlling, and she ran to our apartment. While outside, she got her keys to her car and drove to pick up the medicine from the pharmacy. At this point, I was just like, whatever. I got a call to go travel for a week again. The day I picked her up from the psych ward, we originally got a dog because honestly, it was impulsive and I wanted one. 5 hours into my 8-hour drive, I got a call from her mother that she was at the emergency room again. She destroyed the apartment again, but also managed to spend $21,000 on my credit card and started 2 loans. I paid off the loans and am still working on the credit card. Somehow, she got scammed and I was out of money. No checking, savings, or anything. I let my boss know of the situation, and he let me go home. As soon as I got home, she was released from the emergency room and waiting for me in our apartment in the morning. I told her I was divorcing her, and I let my boss know. He promoted me to where I am currently at, 2 states away, just to help me get out of the situation. I still have my dog, and he is my best boy. I now have $10,000 in my name, about to own 15 acres of land and a new build barndominium, and I have finally found peace. If it wasn't for my boss helping me, I wouldn't be where I am today. Moral of the story: don't date any girl from the state of Georgia. They are crazy. And avoid mother-in-laws who intrude into marriages.